What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Simply Soccer podcast. As you can tell by the title, this week we're going over some books I actually want to recommend for you all. I assume that most of you who listen to this podcast on a regular basis are pretty committed to learning, or pretty committed to growing and learning. So I want to give you some book recommendations that I think have really helped me to become either a better athlete, a better person, and things of this nature, become more disciplined. And at the moment, I have 3 recommendations of books I've read. And I have a recommendation of a book I haven't read, but I want to read. So I'm going to go over those. And as I'm going through those, there might be some other books that pop in my head that I might say, oh, that would be good. But these 3 books I'm going to mention, I think are really, really good and definitely a great place to start. I'm someone who's a pretty avid reader. I try and read pretty much every day. It's usually a habit, a goal of mine to do. And, I like to read a lot of books. But one thing I think when it comes to reading is I like quality over quantity. And what I mean by that is there are millions, hundreds of millions, I don't know how many books out there, but a ton. And there are going to be plenty of books that or just, to say it lightly, suck and aren't going to benefit you in any way. There are millions of books out there that might even be popular that aren't going to be the most beneficial for you. So when it comes to books, I'm always a big avid believer in quality over quantity, meaning I would rather reread a certain book over and over again if I think that by reinforcing the ideas contained in the book is going to benefit me. I would rather do that than go from that book to the next book to the next book to the next book and not get the benefits because either I'm jumping from one idea to the next or the other books just aren't as good. So just when you're thinking about reading, just remember, it's not a contest. It's not a contest about, oh, I've read more books than you, or look at how many books I read this year, or look at how many books I can read in a week. And a lot of what I'll find and see when I'm online, kind of just on YouTube or something, I'll see a lot of things like how to speed read, how to read this many books in a week. If people know who Tai Lopez is, he's famously known for reading a book a day. And again, although I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, and there are definitely some benefits from doing this, I personally just enjoy reading, having a select few books that are either highly recommended by people who are successful, who have read them and stand by them, or books I've read and I go, you know what, when I was reading this book and I was implementing the ideas, things were going really well, they were working, I don't know why I ever stopped doing that, so I'm going to go back and read this book again. And that's happened actually many times where I've read a book which actually has been life-changing, but because I didn't commit the things contained in that book to habit, as in the ideas, because what happens is you will get what you focus your attention on. So if you read a book and then you read the book, you figure out the ideas in the book, you read the ideas, you like the ideas, and you're like, oh, these are cool, and you start implementing the ideas in that book, but then you finish the book, you finish all the way through, you put it down and you forget about it and you stop doing those ideas, you won't get the benefits. And I know many people do this, and I am definitely guilty of doing this so much, because I love to read, and again, I've fallen into the syndrome of seeing it of just wanting to go from one book to the next as if it's an honor, or not an honor, sorry, as if it's some kind of quality I have to be able to read more and more books. But I'm finding that the more I stick to certain books I know are beneficial, when you find a book and the ideas contained in that book are helping you and you can see results and it's moving you forward, don't stop doing those things. If you have to reread that book 10, 20, 30 times, do it. There's someone who I follow called Bob Proctor. He's a big advocate for things like law of attraction, but he's a very, very successful guy, very happy guy. He's 72 or something. I don't know how old he is, but he's getting there. He's at a pretty advanced age, yet he's one of the most energetic people I've ever seen. And so he's a happy dude. He's positive. He's successful. He's pretty much got everything he wants in life. And he's helping other people do the same. And one thing he mentioned when he was talking about he doesn't have a formal education or anything like that, but what he learned was the law of attraction, and he learned all these other ideas from a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And he said he read that book so many times that he could quote the book, he could say the book out loud verbatim without making a mistake because he's just read it so many times. He's committed it to memory. And he used the ideas in that book to become successful. He built off the ideas in that book. It was the foundation of his success. One book, now I guarantee he's read many more and other things, but that was the book that he read over and over and over and over and over again, and it led to him implementing the ideas in that book, and by doing that on a consistent basis and growing more and more, he became a successful person. So I just want to use that as an example of you don't need to go from one book to the next book to the next book. It's not a contest. I mean, which would you rather be? Would you rather be the person who goes, yeah, I've read thousands of books, yet you're struggling in life and you don't have what you want and you're not moving in the direction you want? Or would you be the person, you know what, actually I do read new books from time to time and I love discovering new ideas, but there's actually this couple of books I just keep rereading over and over again just to remind myself of the ideas, and it's moving you towards your goals because you're doing that. Like some of the books I'm going to recommend to you are going to be like that. They're books that if you can reread over and over and over again to really solidify the ideas and to make sure that you're actually doing what's contained in the book. And the thing is, the more you look at certain information or focus on certain things, the more into your subconscious it's going to go. Because if I read a book over and over and over again, I'm going to not only learn those ideas, I'm going to internalize those ideas. It's completely different. It's completely different being exposed to a new idea and going, whoa, like, and that changing your reality a little bit and internalizing it. Like, have you ever like discovered something and it just blew your mind? Like, you ever just heard something and you're like, dude, that could change my life. I know this could change my life, or this could change my game, or this could change the kind of footballer or soccer player I am, but then you might do it for a little bit and then you just stop. One of the biggest reasons for this is because you took your attention away from it. So whatever was the catalyst for you learning that idea, or whatever was the reason that you were exposed to that idea and you were learning how to implement that idea, you probably stopped looking at that. Like what I would do, maybe I would learn an idea from someone on a YouTube video, like a TED Talk or something, and I would implement the idea and it would start working. I would start seeing differences. But the problem was I would stop watching that. I would stop watching that video or whatever material I discovered the idea in, the practices that came with that. And because I wasn't now focused on it, I just went back into my automatic setup, into my default state. So when you're learning a new thing, you want to be exposed to it as much as possible. You want to keep it on the forefront of your mind. This is why 30-day challenges I think are really great, because if you do it right, you write out the 30-day challenge, you go over why you're doing the 30-day challenge, you go over the reasons why you shouldn't quit, you go over what you'll gain if you do it, what you'll lose if you don't do it. It keeps it and you keep that list around you a lot. It keeps you on the forefront of your mind. Like I'm doing a new one, just for like little things like nail biting and things like that. Just like little habits I want to get rid of. And nail biting is a subconscious thing for me, but whenever I have this list near me, now whenever my nail goes towards my mouth to bite, I quickly pull it away because I'm reminded of the reasons why I'm doing it. I'm reminded of, the benefits and everything because I have that information close to me because it's not subconscious yet. So let's get into the books now because I think I've kind of explained that well enough and we're already like 8 minutes in. So just remember that when you have like a book you really feel connected to and you really feel is going to help you, don't just read it once. Read it multiple times. Really embed those ideas into your subconscious. And remember, reading is not a contest. It really is not a contest. Reading is an enjoyable practice that can help you to learn, that can help you to learn new ideas that you can then internalize if you think those ideas are good for you. And again, some of these books I recommend, you may read them and think it's not for you. That's absolutely fine. But when you do find that information in that book that helps give you that information, it's the vehicle for that information for you. When you find that book and you know that this is going to help you massively, you just get that gut feeling that it is, reread it, keep reading it, implement the ideas, go all in on that book, and don't worry about the next book. Again, keep reading other books as well, simply because, I like to read. I like reading new books and discovering new ideas. But what I started doing is I'll start buying books that are on similar topics to books I've already read. Meaning if I read a book, say on the law of attraction, I'll buy more books on that. If I read a book on exercise, and its effects on the brain and things like that, I'll start buying more books like that. So it's like I'm learning the same stuff, but from a different perspective, or I'm learning additional stuff on the same topic. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to over diversify. Again, it's not a bad thing to do, but just remember, if you really want to hone in on an idea or a thing or a practice, you need to focus on that. And by going from one book to the next book to the next book, you'll move your focus away from that. So not a contest, just remember that. So let's go over the 3 books I recommend that I think are going to be really good. Now, I've picked things that are not only going to be things that help you grow as an individual, but these are things that are going to help you with soccer. So I wanted to make sure these were at least soccer related in some way. Now, the books aren't actually about soccer. None of the books I'm recommended are about soccer. Some are about athletics and in general, but each one of these books will help you become a better soccer player and just a better kind of individual in my eyes if you implement the ideas. Now, the first book, if you've watched my videos, you've seen up on my bookshelf, I'll display it sometimes, is called Spark. And Spark is by someone called John Rady and also Eric, I think it's Hagerman, I can't pronounce his name, I think also helped with it. And essentially, what the book Spark goes over is the revolutionary science of exercise in the brain. Because believe it or not, it's not until recently that they discovered that exercise actually has a huge impact on your brain's health. Like a huge impact, one of the biggest. And one of the arguments for this, and one of the reasons they believe this is because if you think of how our bodies are, you think of how we've evolved as a species. I mean, this is, stuff people don't usually think about, but if you think about how our bodies are and how we evolved, we were not sedentary. We were not creatures that sat at a computer for hours upon end. We didn't sit and watch TV. We were active. We were mobile. And they would say, nomadic humans, which we were at one point, and which our bodies, by the way, are still the same as we were in those days, would walk up to 5-10 miles a day in order to gather food or to hunt or to things like that. So they were getting that in daily, and our bodies became accustomed to that. But now in this day and age where we're sitting for long periods, and we're not as active, it's hurting our bodies and our brain as well. That's the big one, our brain. And it's connecting exercise to all of these ailments that we feel. All these diseases could actually be cured and prevented, a lot of them, with exercise. Now, the reason I've chosen this book to kind of give it to you as a recommendation is not only for the benefits it will give your brain, your mind, how intelligent you are, how much energy you have. That's an important one, how much energy you have, but also just overall fitness. It has great information on heart, like cardiovascular health and fitness. Like it's not just about the brain. It has great, in my eyes, what I think is great about the book Spark is let me just actually preface it by saying this. When you hear an idea and you think it's a good idea, you might be a little motivated to do it, but probably not enough. But when you know that idea inside and out, like if you know nutrition, for example, like you're a nutritionist or you're someone who's studied up on what's good for you and what's bad for you, and what's really good for you and bad for you, not what like the common beliefs are, like you've done your research, it completely changes your motivation for wanting to eat healthy. Like if you find out that sugar is actually really terrible for you and is almost like a poison, if you discover that, you research that, and you really start to see evidence for that, guess what you're going to stop doing? What you're more likely to stop doing? Eating sugar. And then if you see, like, for example, there's this healthy diet, and there's just great evidence to support that it's incredibly healthy, it gives you these benefits and these benefits and these benefits, and there's multiple examples, and you should eat these foods, avoid these foods because they're not good for you, and you really deeply research that and you discover that and you have a full understanding of that, guess what you're going to be more motivated to do? Follow that, because you understand why. When you answer the why, when you understand what's going on behind the scenes and you're not ignorant to these topics, you're more motivated to follow through, and exercise is the same way. Understanding why exercise is so important, not just for soccer, because it's incredibly important for soccer. In my eyes, soccer is one of the hardest sports to play, just because you got to run around for 90 minutes. It's not just jogging, it's sprints. Players, I forget what the average is, run like, I forget how many miles a match, like so many miles a match. I'm either thinking 10 or 5. I think I might have my measurements wrong there. But the point of it being, of this book, is it reveals to you just how essential, not just like recommended, because I always hear like, yes, exercise is recommended and you should, you should exercise, but just like blah, blah, blah. It's not, I think, pushed. I mean, nothing should be pushed on us, but it's not highlighted as much as it should, because it is absolutely necessary. And if you read a book like Spark and you do additional research from there, you discover, wow, I need to start exercising. And the great thing about Spark is it shows you how to get started. So even, it doesn't matter what fitness level you're at, you could be listening to this and you could be an incredibly in shape college player, or even better, listening to this. Or you could be someone who has never really worked out in their life. You could be someone, I don't know the age range of people who listen to this. Doesn't matter your age. It's got something for everybody, and it tells you how to get started. It tells you how to kind of work your way up to what the ideal amount of exercise a week is. And I can tell you what they recommend from, and this is, by the way, this is from numerous studies, years of it as well. I can tell you what they recommend. I have it written on my wall. I'm not going to walk over to that because I know what it is, but they recommend 6. And it's going to sound excessive, but I'm just telling you what they've said. And this is what they said is ideal. Like, this is the best case scenario. And of course, for soccer players, you can mix in other things. Sorry, I'm like burping. You can mix in different kind of things because you need to get your training in. You need to get different things than just cardio. But they're talking about cardio right now for your health. They're talking about like your health and your brain and things. And they go, you should be doing 6 cardio sessions a week. Length of about 45 minutes to an hour. 2 of those sessions should be high intensity training, cardio training, so like interval training, so high intensity interval training. And they can be on the shorter side, so maybe you do high intensity interval training for 45 minutes. You can go less than that. Again, this is like the best of the best. This is like in super good shape, right? This is like the most benefits. And what they found about high intensity interval training, it is massively beneficial to your brain. It can help your brain regrow, make new connections. Like, it's incredible for your body to be doing interval training. It releases certain chemicals and hormones that help you, and things like that. And I'm not going to go through the whole book because we got other ones to get to, but that's one that I recommend. So I would definitely pick up Spark if you want to find a new appreciation for working out. If you're someone who struggles with being motivated to work out, like if you're someone listening to this and you lack motivation, like you find that you're not really feeling that motivated, and motivation, by the way, is overrated. When you learn though these ideas, I think, it goes beyond motivation. It becomes a necessity. It becomes something that you go, I gotta do this, right? And it does become enjoyable after a certain point, so don't worry. But if you struggle to get yourself to the gym or get outside and run, or whether lifting, because they talk a little bit about lifting as well. But if you're struggling to do that, I would pick up this book. And if you're someone who's, just wants to really learn more about how fitness affects your brain, affects your body, the ideal amount of cardio you should be getting in, things of that nature, pick up the book Spark. It's a book that's really opened my eyes to certain things. And I can't recommend it enough. So that's the first book I'm going to recommend. And by the way, I'll have links to all these books in the description if you want to check them out, just so you have easy access to that. Or you can just look them up on Amazon or Google or whatever. So Spark is the first book. Okay, so how are we doing on time here? We'll get through all these anyway. I'll be a little quicker. Next book is Peak by Anders Ericsson. Now, I've gone on about Peak. When I first finished the book Peak, I went on about it forever because it's something I've been talking about forever. It goes over basically about expertise. It's the study of expertise, and it goes over like talent versus skill. And it's a really eye-opening book because it's something I always kind of had a feeling about for a while, even when I started my channel, that look, talent's overrated. That's what I used to believe. And the book Peak essentially put this into, gave me the evidence to support this and showed me that yes, talent in the way that it's viewed in today's society is overrated, because a lot of us make excuses about not being able to do something or not being able to be good at something or someone being better than us. That we make the excuse of, oh, they must just be more naturally talented. Because, and the reason we're so comfortable saying something like that is because it suddenly puts the situation out of our control. Because if we feel like we can control the situation, then we know we can do something about it, but we also know that's going to be a lot of hard work. But that's exactly it. You can become better than that player who you think's better than you now. You can catch up to that so-called talented player or whatever. But it's going to take work. It's going to take what's called, they go over in peak, deliberate practice. So if you really want a way to start becoming a better soccer player, if you really want a way to start becoming better really at anything and kind of learning how you actually get good at something, and the cool thing is they actually have some soccer examples in the book. They have some examples for other sports. They have examples that are not even sport related, but kind of still show how important it is to understand that expertise or skill is not something that comes from talent. It isn't something derived from talent. Talent, they go over in the book, there's no actual genetic code. There's no anything they've discovered scientifically that there's a talent gene or something like that for individual things. Now there are certain things like your body and your height and things like that that are genetic. But as far as is there a soccer gene? No, there isn't. Is there a basketball gene? No, there isn't. There's nothing like that. A lot of the really good professional players that you see today, the reason a lot of them are so good is because they started from a very young age and they practice so much to the point, and they practice in the right way. That's very important too. Deliberate practice, they say, is the most ideal way to practice if you want massive growth, if you want to get better and better and better. So it's something I've gone over quite a bit in different videos, but definitely pick up the book Peak as well. It's one of my favorite books on kind of learning how to structure practices so that they're deliberate practice, so you get the most benefits out of it. And it really opened my eyes to what actually gets results. It opened my eyes to how much it takes to get results. It opened my eyes to a lot of things. So definitely pick that up. And if I ever come out with a really in-depth training course, I'll be using ideas from this book to develop that course, because I would want it to be based on deliberate practice to, maximize results and things like that. So that's the second one. It's Peak. So Spark and Peak. So third one is called Relentless by Tim Grover. Now you may have heard of this one, but this one I really like as well. And Tim Grover, I'm trying to remember exactly what his title would be. I don't know if he'd be considered like a performance coach, but he's someone who's trained some of the best athletes in the world. We're talking like the Michael Jordans of the world. We're talking about, you want to know how, I think he mainly trains basketball players. When I was reading the book, but I think he does other athletes as well. I don't remember exactly. But I know, he trains some of the best basketball players, and he's the kind of coach where he's at such a level now that the best come to him. He doesn't even go to them. The best come to him and are like, I want you to train me. And he pushes these people who are already so used to pushing themselves, he pushes them to that next level. He helps them become even better. And he has classifications for what type of player, certain players, there's closers, and all these different levels he has. But I like his book because it really gives you an inside view on how hard these people at the top of their game work, and how hard, people like Tim Grover are working them. And it really gives you a great view, a great perspective on the discipline and dedication that goes into becoming not just a professional athlete. That takes a high level of dedication, sacrifice, discipline as well. But he's working with the best. And it really goes to show how disciplined, how dedicated, how much they sacrifice as well, from little things to big things to get to where they are. And I think, again, it's another very eye-opening read. So it's also a very motivating book as well, because he goes over things to kind of take you to the next level as well. The point of the book is taking the ideas he's used, I believe it's the point of the book, taking ideas that he's used on these professional athletes to make them some of the best, and giving you ways to start improving yourself, improving your own game, improving whatever area it is. And actually, the funny thing is about his book, he's not even directing it necessarily towards athletes. He's directing it, he's saying like these ideas that he uses can be replicated in things like business and stuff like that. So he's like, look, I do this for athletes, but you can do this for yourself in other areas. So it's another really, really eye-opening book. Definitely check it out, Relentless. Again, I'll have all the links to these down below, but that was another one that I really like. So those are three that I recommend based on athletics, because all of these in a way have to do with either skill, like how to build skill, exercise and health, or how to train and stuff like that. So there are other books I would certainly recommend that are outside of that and are more idea based. Like there are books like The One Thing. I really like that book, which tells you to focus on your one, like kind of goes over how to narrow your focus and be more specific and have a priority that you focus on every single day. Doing deep work. I really like that book. It's not necessarily soccer related, although it could be, because your one thing could be you're just playing soccer every single day. It's more of a business book, but I like that book as well, so you can check out The One Thing. And there's a bunch of other books I could give you as well, but I'm going to just leave it at that. So the last book I want to recommend is actually one I haven't read. It's one that I want to read, so I thought I would just mention it. And it's called Mind Gym: The Athlete's Guide to Inner Excellence. And I found this book when I was looking for like good books for athletes to read specifically. And I was attracted to this book because it goes over, again, I haven't read this. I'm just prefacing this by saying, as a disclaimer, I have not read this one yet. This is one that I want to read. It's on my list, called Mind Gym. So I like it because it seems like it's going to be going over the importance of the mental side of athletics. And again, this is something I go over and over again, is how important the mental side of the game is. Not just, and the thing is, the mental side of the game of football, like your confidence, your belief in your ability to train and push through the barriers that are inevitably going to show up, by the way. There will always be barriers and pain and hurdles that you need to get through. The best players overcome those hurdles. They find ways to get around them, to conquer them, to beat them, to get to that next level. The players that quit never become ones that grow. If you're not overcoming challenges and barriers, both mentally and physically, you're never growing. So just keep that in mind. Okay, sorry for the pause there. I was just looking up the Mind Gym because I wanted to give you a little synopsis, a little kind of brief thing on what they say this book is about. So, believing in yourself is paramount to success for any athlete. Gary's lessons and David's writing provide examples of the importance of the mental game. That's perfect. That's awesome. I didn't even know they were going to say mental game, but there you go. It goes over the importance of the mental game, of how top athletes and top people in really any area have strong mental game. They have strong mental toughness. And in my eyes, it is the most important. I always say, this is what I say, and this is what I say on my videos because I don't want to, overstep my bounds by any means. But here I'm going to say this to you. For those of you listening to the podcast, I believe the mental game is incredibly more important than the physical game. The reason I never say that in videos is because I don't want, like new players or beginner players looking at the videos and going, oh, I just need to work on the mental side of my game. I don't have to worry about actually going out there and doing skill moves. I don't have to actually worry about getting fit. I don't have to worry about all that. I don't want people misinterpreting that because it seems like a lot of times it's misinterpreted. So I usually say 50-50. But in my eyes, once you get to a certain point, having control over the mental side of your game, being able to have belief in your ability and full confidence in your ability and assurance that you can perform, having the ability to believe that you can overcome the obstacles that come your way instead of trying to avoid the obstacles, that belief is, in my eyes, that mental toughness, that mental game, having strong mental game is more important than the physical skills. I'm dead serious. Here's what I'll give you an example of. Now, again, I don't want you to take this the wrong way and think that means you don't have to go out there and practice. No, you need to go out there and practice a lot, and you need to be disciplined. Read Peak, and it will give you some ideas for deliberate practice you can do, or it'll tell you what deliberate practice is, so you can go out and start doing that. But let me put it this way. I would much rather have a player on my team. If I was constructing a team and I had a tryout and I saw players and I somehow knew what their best attributes were, I would pick the player that has the incredible confidence and mental game and mental toughness, who is less skilled, less practiced. Let's say they started the game later than a few players. I would much rather have that player. And again, we're not talking about big-headedness or overconfidence or narcissism or egoic behavior. That's not what we're talking about. That's not strong mental game. That's actually very weak mental game. Do not mistake big-headedness, overconfidence, ego for true strong mental game. Ego usually comes from a place of insecurity and protection. And again, all these words are up for interpretation. So I'm talking about a player who's like, you know what, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm so great. I don't need to practice, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just a player who is completely confident in their ability, but is also confident in their ability to get better, a player basically who has a strong mental game knows that they also need to go out and practice and get better and better and better. And I would rather pick that player who is committed to growth, who has a strong mental game, than a player who might be incredibly skillful, but lacks that. But lacks confidence, that lacks the mental game, that lacks the toughness, the mental toughness. And I can tell you, I've been a player in the past, and sometimes I still fall into this. Like, you know, some habits, they die, bad habits die hard. But when I was younger, this was me. I was a very skillful player, very good, because I practiced all the time. Like, it was all I did. But I had a lot of confidence issues. And I can tell you, there were players who were less skillful than me that started over me because of this on certain teams. Now, there were most teams I would still start for, but it also affected my performances. I was very stop-start. Like, I would have like a couple good games, like really good games where I showed what I could do. Then I'd go like 4 games being average or poor. And it always came down to usually me getting upset over a mistake and then losing my confidence, or just going into a game with low self-esteem or belief in my ability. And it wasn't until I got a grasp on this and learned some methods to overcome this, and started working on my confidence, that I was able to actually maintain consistency in games. So just recognize that this is so important, and that's why I recommend this book even before reading it. It's got great reviews. It goes over a concept that's very important to me. It's definitely a book I'm going to buy and read. But again, it's called Mind Gym, The Athlete's Guide to Inner Excellence. So don't neglect your inner game. I've given you a book that goes over the connection between the inner and the outer, the spark, which goes over why exercise is so important, not only for your physical side, but also for your mental side, also for your brain and your body internally, the internal processes of your body. So you have that. You have Peak, which is going to tell you how to do deliberate practice and how to actually become skillful and expert, like start moving towards becoming an expert in something. What else did we go over? Relentless, which is going to teach you how to be relentless. Essentially, it's going to teach you how to start essentially performing better than other people, how to start doing the work that other people just aren't willing to do. And it's going to give you a look into the mind and the process that some of the top athletes in the world go through. And I've given you Mind Gym, which is the athlete's guide to inner excellence. So you have Peak, which is basically excellence, and then you have inner excellence. So ultimately, I'm not going to tell you, maybe I will, what book to start with. They're all good. I would personally, which one would I start with? Mind Gym. Actually, Mind Gym wouldn't be the worst one to start with, because again, I think developing the inner game is so important. But I would say start with Spark, because I think exercise is so incredibly important. And if you're not exercising enough at the moment, if you're feeling like down or not motivated or not energetic, one of the reasons might be because you're either not exercising enough or in the correct way. So I would pick up Spark. Just a great book. It will just keep reading it a little bit every day, or however much a day you want to, but just pick it up, read it, internalize it, because it's going to start motivating you to want to work out. And how great would that be if you actually want to work out, right? It makes me feel bad when I don't work out. And I'm not saying that's as like a guilt trip thing, but it does. Like when I don't work out now, I'm like, oh no, the consequences. So I think that's actually a good thing. So definitely pick up that one, and then the other books, read in any order you want. But those are the 4 books I'm going to recommend to you today. If you like this, I can definitely make other ones where I recommend different genres of books, but these are ones I definitely recommend. Now, I'm not like the most well-read person, by the way. There are probably people who can recommend books that are really great to you as well, who have read tons more books than me. However, again, I would reiterate, when you're going for books, don't go for quantity, go for quality. Go for the books that have been proven to help people change and move forward in their lives. Go for books that, like the book Spark, for example, is the culmination of decades of research. Even though it didn't take them decades to write the book, the information they gathered in order to be able to write the book took decades, right? You're getting decades worth of research in one book. To me, that's a book you should read. Okay? So, be careful about what you allow yourself to be exposed to when it comes to information, and books is a big thing. Like as far as TV and electronics go, I don't even watch TV really anymore. I would recommend you do the same, but I won't recommend that actually, because I know that's a lot of people love that kind of thing. But just be careful about what you're letting into your subconscious, what you're allowing yourself to focus on, because again, what's the famous saying? It's like energy flows where attention goes. So whatever you're focusing on is what you're going to get. So if you're reading the right books and you're implementing that information, you'll start getting those right things. You start reading books that just aren't that great and you're implementing those stuff, you won't. You start watching things that just aren't, you start watching crazy negative things. You're watching the news all the time. You're doing that. You'll start focusing on those things more. That's not what you want. So I'm not going to get deep into that because that's a whole different podcast or idea. But those are some books for you guys. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Definitely pick up some of these books. I really do believe reading is a beneficial practice. If again, we've already gone over what my beliefs for how to do it are. But yeah, even if you're just reading as little as 10 minutes a day, it's definitely a great practice to have. And you'll probably be like me. You'll find that after a while, you'll start enjoying reading. When you start reading about topics that are interesting and start reading about topics that benefit you, you'll find that you'll start love reading. Like there are books I think like in school, we get books books forced down our throat that we have to read, like required reading. And it gives us this bad idea of reading, and kind of puts us off it. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can read books that actually interest you. You can read books that you like because they help you grow. And seek out those books. And when you find one that's helping you a lot, keep reading it. Don't just read it and put it down and never read it again. All right, guys, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Let me know if you did. Let me know of any questions you have down below. We will do a hashtag. I would do hashtag book, but that's way too easy to guess. So let's do one of the books. Let's do hashtag mind gym, just because that sounds cool. That's just a cool sound. Hashtag mind gym. I like that. So that's what we'll have it. Put hashtag mind gym in the comments if you've gotten to this point. What it does is it allows me to know that you've listened to this whole podcast. I just like to know who has and who hasn't, because it gives me an idea of who's like kind of committed to listening to these and, hopefully learning from the information that I'm talking about in them. So hashtag mind gym. And also if you leave a hashtag and you leave a question or a topic you would like answered in a podcast, I'm much more likely to answer it. Okay, I'm much more likely to answer a question that's coming from someone who has listened to the whole thing than I am to someone who has not. It doesn't guarantee that I will answer your question on a podcast, but it definitely improves your chances. So please put that down there. Even if you don't have a comment or you don't have a question, put hashtag MindGym in the comments just to indicate to me that you've listened. Even if you have nothing else to say, just put that down there so that I can, smile when I look at your comment and go, I like this guy or girl. Doesn't matter. So yeah, that would be great. All right, guys. So thank you once again for tuning in. Make sure you hit that like button as well. You can share this podcast if you want. I'm not too concerned about how many views these podcasts get. I'm more concerned about, you select few people listening to them and hopefully gaining something from them. And guys, seriously, get into the habit of reading. It's quite a journey. Like, you'll be surprised, like, what one book will lead you to another great book, and the ideas that book will lead you to, and the changes that will come out of that. It has almost like a snowball or domino effect if you do it consistently. So definitely, I would definitely recommend you get in the habit of reading if you haven't already. All right, guys, thanks so much. Put that hashtag in the comment section, and I will probably see you in a video or talk to you later. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. See you later.